I want to talk today about how I think we're sort of building a nuclear weapon. And this nuclear weapon is designed to destroy the field of orthodontics. That is one of my goals with Reviv, because I think that orthodontics are very destructive and they've damaged many millions of lives. This practice has to end. Let's dive in. Why do I say orthodontics is damaging? I've talked about this before, but basically, when you do braces or aligners or you do a palate expander, they completely don't understand the dynamics of the skull and the skeleton. When you do those things, you're changing the structural stability of the skull. I always talk about the curve of spee. So when you do some orthodontics, usually that curve of spee flattens because the skull starts collapsing in, the spine twists. And this, in my view, is accelerated aging. It is the cause. I believe they're going to figure out that this is the root cause of pretty much all disease. This process, this biomechanical process that gets accelerated by orthodontics. People are paying to essentially destroy themselves with orthodontics. We're seeing it in Reviv, right? Like, we've got over 1,000 people in the community. You hear people's stories, and it's just story after story of, I did braces, or I did aligners, or I did extractions. And then I had years of these health issues. And most of the time, they never figured out until recently that that could be caused by these orthodontics. They just thought, it's genetics or shitty luck, or they blame something else. Now, with Reviv, people are starting to finger the blame in the correct place. It was braces and these different orthodontics. Why am I the one that has to tell people? It's like, why haven't people figured this out before? That's one question you got to ask yourself, because orthodontics has been around, I think, over 100 years. And ChatGPT estimates over 800 million people have done it in, over time. How is it that 800 million people haven't figured this out? I think that there's several reasons. One is, people like when their teeth look straighter and, things look maybe a little bit more aesthetically pleasing at the very outset. How this impacts the human body and the human skull, draws out over a number of years. If the impact was immediate, they probably would have put the connection together. But because it happens over a number of years, it's harder to put that connection together. And the other thing I would say is that there's very poor transparency. You talk to an orthodontist and you ask them, all right, what issues have your patients had with braces or palate expanders? And you're going to hear from them, oh, none. I've never had any issues with my patients. But when you go on these TMJ forums and whatnot, they're full of people that have TMJ and chronic pain and ADHD, and you look at their past and they all, did braces and aligners. My point with that is they're very intransparent. If all these dentists had all their patients from the past on a single forum that you could just go and ask, hey, how you guys doing? And you find it, if you actually did that, you'd have all these people chiming in from a couple of years back. Yeah, I'm doing absolutely crap. I had this go wrong. I had this go wrong. Right. And that's what we're doing with Reviv. That is the bar that Reviv holds itself to. Everybody that's doing Reviv now and ever since the beginning are on our group, sharing what is going on. We're holding ourselves to a level of transparency that orthodontics never has held itself to. And so for that reason, I like to say that there's never really been a movement like this, right? Where a group of people have the correct information about the damage that orthodontics does and are correcting it. And we're growing and we're communicating the damaging effects of orthodontics to others. I think that this is going to end up being very powerful. The group is still very small. I think the information that we're passing on is starting to be a lot more convincing because there's so many people that have so many, there's so much data around what they went through as a result of orthodontics. And I think that eventually this movement that will start, which will probably evolve in many ways, right? I don't think I'm going to be the only group that is going to be doing this. I hope to light the fire that then gets taken up by many different groups and people all over the world who start condemning orthodontics, and that eventually we put a tombstone on this thing and just wipe it out. That's how I view it. We're starting a revolution, and that revolution is going to end with the complete destruction of orthodontics. Hopefully, thousands and thousands of court cases against orthodontics and against the entire industry for what has happened for decades now. When that happens, I will be very happy.